Palumbo with an RXMuscle news update. The Arnold Australia is 1 day away now, taking place in Melbourne. Tony Doherty has been running this show now since its inception, when it first started as the Australia Grand Prix. When he first started, he used to come on my radio show over 10 years ago, I'd say about 12 years ago, 13 years ago. And you know, he was begging competitors to come do the show. He was trying to come over to the United States to actually, you know, court them so that they would come over and do a show. Nowadays, people are begging to get into the Arnold Australia, and it's going to be a great one. It's going to be a rematch of sorts because we're going to see a lot of the same competitors that we saw at the Arnold USA 2 weeks ago. We will not see Brandon Curry, the champion of this year, but we will see William Bonac coming back off that very, very close, narrow defeat to Brandon Curry 2 weeks ago. He obviously was last year's Arnold Classic champ. Last year he lost in Australia to Roelly Winklaar. Now the question is, will Bonac be facing off against the likes of Roelly Winklaar as his toughest challenger, or are we going to see a new guy in there? Are we going to see Luke Sandoe, who was third place 2 weeks ago, the new guy on the block, the dark horse of dark horses? Will he come in here and challenge Bonac? I think first we got to talk about Bonac for a minute. Bonac is obviously the highest ranked Olympia competitor out there at this point. In my estimations 2 years ago, he should have been second at the Olympia. He was fourth this past year, and you have to consider him the favorite. I had him being the favorite going into the USA show. Brandon Curry kind of came out of nowhere, very close battle. I still have Bonac as my favorite. If he shows up the way he showed up 2 weeks ago, I don't think anyone in this lineup can beat him. I just don't think they can match his quality of density muscle. They can't match the conditioning he's got. And while Luke Sandoe, I think, is my personal favorite, only because he's the new guy on the block and he's got tons of muscle on him, I don't know if he flows as well as Bonac at this point, and I don't know if he has as much mature muscle. But Sandoe is definitely a guy you do not want to stand next to on stage. Tremendous amounts of muscle mass, just thickness everywhere, density. He's really not missing any body parts. He's got calves. Lonnie Teeper would like that. He's got a great back. He's got a good midsection. His conditioning has been the best we've seen. If he brings this same look, and I suspect he will, seeing that he's going to be competing in his own backyard, not really his own backyard, but you know what I mean. It's gonna, he's going to be one of the toughest guys to beat. I almost made Luke Sandoe an Aussie. I think the Aussies would find no problem adopting him, but I don't think the UK guys want to let him go. Now, let's talk about why Luke Sandoe can beat William Bonac. He can beat him because he's got more muscle than him. He can beat him because his conditioning is very comparable, and maybe he can beat him because he's just thicker. But let's take the other angle. Can William Bonac lose to Luke Sandoe? I say no if he's at his best. If he's off a little bit, I think Sandoe could definitely step in. Now, the guy we have to really be worried about, I think, in this lineup is Josh Lenartowicz, because he didn't place last week. I thought he should have been 5th or 6th in that lineup, but Josh did not look good. Now, I got word off the street, I don't know if it's true, that Josh was carving up in the Arnold USA on cheesecake. I don't know if that's true or not, but it might have looked like he did, because he was definitely holding water in areas he shouldn't have. His lower body was not as tight, but I understand the last 2 weeks he's been under severe militant watch, and I don't think that he has missed anything. He hasn't missed a beat, so to speak, and I hear he's 12 or 13 pounds lighter now for the Australia show. And that, to me, in my mind, is exactly what Josh Lenartowicz needed to do. He needed to bring it down 10, 12 pounds, and he's going to be deadly on that stage. Will it be enough to beat a William Bonac or Luke Sandoe? We won't know, but he's got a lot of mass, and I think it was a mistake to try to come in too big, over 275. I think he's got to be more in the 260s, and when he is, he's deadly. So Josh Lenartowicz could also be a guy that we have to watch out for. But, if I don't mention, Roelly Winklaar, then I would be doing a disservice to this preview, because Roelly Winklaar, was third at the Olympia, the highest ranking Olympian. Bonac obviously was third 2 years ago, but Roelly beat him this past year. Roelly won the Arnold Australia last year, so he's technically the defending champ. Now, 2 weeks ago, Roelly was not in good shape. We saw that even 2 weeks before the Arnold USA. He had done a guest posing, and we knew he was a little off. But he had an additional 2 weeks to try to bring it down. Will that be enough time to be at his best? I don't think so. I don't think you can rush these things. I think that he'll be better than he was 2 weeks ago, but I don't think we're going to see the best Roelly Winklaar. And if we don't see the best Roelly Winklaar, I don't know if he can beat William Bonac, and I don't know if he could beat Luke Sandoe, and I don't know if he could even beat our good friend Josh Lenartowicz. So this is going to be, a test. Now, there's another guy in this lineup we have to mention, Steve Kuclo. Steve Kuclo really impressed me at the Arnold USA because he wasn't in the first call out, then he worked his way into that first group, and I thought he could have finished as high as fourth at the show because he was as just as good a shape as Luke was and all the other top three guys. So I thought the Kuclo should have been a few places higher, but I think going into this Arnold Australia, which is, whenever you travel, 24 hours across the world, conditioning is never perfect. And I think we're going to see a lot of guys not at their best because of the flight. I think if Kuclo can hold it and bring in the same conditioning he did at the Arnold USA, I think he could be deadly here as well, and we're going to be talking about him in that top four conversation. So if I had to make a prediction, I would go with William Bonac to win this show. I don't think he could lose. I think that Josh Lenartowicz and Luke Sandoe are going to be battling for that second and third spot, and I think that Steve Kuclo will be in that fourth position or fifth position in here. There are other good competitors in the lineup as I glance over the sheet. I see Quincy Winkler, which is Roelly's brother, will be doing the open for the first time here. Akeem Williams, who's always very, very dangerous, will be in this lineup as well. And you have Jeff Classic Beckham, who you never know who's going to, if he shows up at his best, he, with his structure, could also sneak into that top group. But for now, I think you have to consider William Bonac the man to beat. We won't know, but the show will be in less than 24 hours from now. Stay tuned to all the updates here at RXMuscle.com. If you haven't subscribed, make sure you hit the subscribe button. I'm Dave Palumbo for another RX Muscle news update.